What up, guys? I'm looking at myself with my first beard in probably a few years. I probably should cut this a little bit, trim it. My fiance doesn't really want me to, but I think it needs to be kind of evened out a little bit. I've had a little bit of writer's block. I've been feeling a little bit down for the past few days. The fictional book I'm surprisingly struggling with because I don't know or don't really like where it's going. So I switched back to writing my non-fictional books. And I kind of just wanted to talk about what I was writing about. So the title of the book, the working title that I have, is meant to be controversial. It's meant to upset some people. It's meant to get people to look at it and say that's pretty interesting. The title is called "For There to Be God, There Must Be a Devil." And the entire idea about it is it's about demonization. It's about tribalism. It's about how we look at what right and wrong is and who gets to decide that, how we decide that, the problems in which we decide that, and how a lot of things almost need to be simplified to be able to maintain that statement. So we might... Sorry, there's a guy walking by. We might have a little bit more progress with that. You know, I don't have as much free time now that I have a job. So finding the time to write is a little bit more challenging. What little time I do have, you know, it's not like I have... Because when I didn't have a job, you know, I would have days at a time where I didn't really have anything planned except for applying for jobs and trying to find job interviews. And so I had a lot more downtime. So like not all of my downtime needed to be spent writing. So I just had more time to where I just needed to do something. And I think it was just easier to channel all that energy into writing. Whereas now, you know, I have a day at a time off and I just need to like be able to compartmentalize my time off to doing more things. But like there's not... every time I try to do that, there's less recharge time, and mentally I'm just like a little bit slower. But this morning before work, I managed to get a couple of things jotted down, you know, a few pages, but not really as much as I wished. I would like to be done with at least a chapter. I like to do like a chapter a week at least, but that's when I have all the time in the world. If I was able to, I'd probably be typing while I was here, but I can't. I barely have time to write. And so yeah, today I kind of explored the introduction and how I wanted to introduce the ideas. What little I am writing, I am a lot happier with it, with my non-fictional work than my fictional work. So I don't feel as much of I feel like this book is basically gonna just take a little bit longer to write, but I won't need to edit it as much, or I won't need to go back over it. And so talking about demonization, right? So when you hear demonization, right, like you think of people just being made to be like the bad guy, like this person has been demonized. But I look at it more as just this concept of taking a thing and saying that it's a bad thing. And then a lot of people are very satisfied with saying like, so not doing that bad thing by definition is a good thing. And so I have a couple of issues with that. You know, one, things aren't always easily said as bad. The example that I'm about to bring up, that I'm about to work on in my first chapter, is about killing people, right? People killing people. You know, it's easy to say that killing is a bad thing, but one, you can take the idea of killing and then separate it from the idea of murder, because all murders are a form of killing, but not all killings are murders, because murder can actually be a legal term. Murder is specifically killing somebody illegally, or it can be looked at as such. And a lot of the laws kind of dictate, like, you know, in self-defense, or in like the when you have like reasonable apprehension of like great bodily harm, you know, like in self-defense, or like when you're trying to prevent somebody else from being severely hurt, and it kind of changes from state to state. But if you kill somebody in self-defense, you know, a common example, people might say, like, if somebody breaks into your house and you shoot them, you know, that may not be murder, but it is still killing. And it's something that a lot of people can resonate with. And it's not so simple. And so once you have to introduce context, you have all of these examples of things where you can't really easily define your morality. And ultimately, everything kind of boils down to like a subjective perspective. I think people can almost justify anything, especially if you kind of limit the amount of information you're willing to talk about. And I think that society as a whole kind of relies on this. I think that a lot of our tribalist mentalities and the way that humans tend to think about things makes it easy for us to have very simplistic ways of looking at problems, to which we try to say right or wrong. But you know, I like many other people always think that I'm right about, like, not every topic, but like, it's my immediate gut instinct and reaction to things is that I'm right about it. And I have no reason to think that, other than I understand why I think and what I am doing and my own point of view on it. And so when I take myself outside of that, I understand that there might be some piece of information I didn't have, or I might be mistaken, or I might not be as rational as I think I am, which could make me wrong. And I think that part of what I wanted to talk about is that we try to define ourselves by good and bad things, and we try to alienate ourselves from the things that we say are bad. And almost always there are people attached to it, which kind of justifies people's opinions of each other. And it's kind of like, that kind of gets into the tribalistic mentality. A lot of people almost use it as a tool for like never admitting that they're wrong. You might hear like a common word for this would be like narcissists, you know, like people who need to like define themselves as right. And a lot of it is like used to basically prevent societal change. I mean, you might have situations where your government or your country are doing things that are wrong, but because you define your country as being right, you're not willing to really confront that. And there might be a lot of things that you're not really willing to confront in yourself. And that's kind of the topics that I wanted to explore. I wanted to put that in a fictional setting. And the book that I'm trying to write, you know, I'm a little bit further into that one, but a lot of that has to do with different people's opinions. And I wanted to have like an investigator like confronting different people's opinions. The first person and the main person he talks to is supposed to be a pretty extremist person. And the more, I wanted it to basically be like, the more that you talk to him, the more that he starts to make sense. And he's not necessarily right, but because that is the opinions that you're exposing yourself to, it convinces you that he's right. Or because there are some things that he says that are true, it almost instinctively makes you try to justify everything else that this guy says. Or it might just be something completely different as I keep writing it, and maybe that's why I'm struggling with it, is because I'm trying to have this dynamic. I'm not really too sure. But ultimately, right, it's a process. It's not always going to be immediate. Yeah, writer's block, I don't think, is a consequence of a lack of creativity. I think a lack of creativity is a consequence of you not making the time for it. And I think I'm just struggling with my new schedules to like try to find the time for being creative and for thinking about things. I don't fucking recognize my fucking self with this beard. It's so strange. Like, I almost look like a different person to myself. Like, if it weren't for this fucking giant forehead, like, I feel like I would just be a different person.